the setbacks along the way toward going towards your competition. So a defined system can help your team stay organized throughout the whole season. So our team, for example, uses a system called Scrum. Scrum is an agile project development framework. So basically a method of getting stuff done. It was created in the 1990s by Jeff Sutherland and a few others. Sutherland also wrote a book about it called Scrum: The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. So Scrum emphasizes having a working product after each iteration. Essentially, that means you want to have something completed every single set of time periods your team designates. So our team, we used periods of 2 weeks, and at the end of each 2 weeks, we wanted a certain working product or any like completed part of our robot or any goal we wanted. So the product doesn't need to be complete, but there has to be an added functionality that works. Something that needs to be changed and that needs to be working by the end of the for us 2 week period or a time period that you guys decide on. Scrum is used by almost every big tech company today, such as Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Adobe, Intel, etc. How it works. First, you want to be in a coherent team, preferably between 5 to 9 people, as that range works the best. So the main principle of Scrum is sprints. As I mentioned earlier, we use 2 week periods, and so that is essentially the time period is called a sprint. A sprint is a frame of time in which the team gets a certain amount of work done. At the beginning of the sprint, the team lists out the tasks they want to accomplish in that sprint. You want to outline everything you want to have done by the end of your time period or your sprint in order to have all of you be more cognizant about what you need to complete. All of the tasks go onto the task board, which is where a Scrum team displays the work they're doing on a sprint. And here's an example of what a task board would look like. So you see there are columns and rows for certain different categories. Our team specifically used an application called Trello, which we'll talk more about later. But there's the few main sections of a task board, which are, if we go back, you can see the first is called a backlog, to do, in progress, in review, and completed. So you can customize these in order to cater to your own interests, but the main ones would be backlog, in progress, and completed. So your outline for what you want to have done, what's currently being done, and what's already have been done. So every day during the sprint, the team gathers for a stand-up meeting. This is really important because you want your entire team to be completely aware of the current progress of every single task and what still needs to be done, so that it's not completely reliant on any single person as well. So the members discuss their progress and, most importantly, obstacles that are slowing them down. This discussion can help you guys work together to come up with solutions and look at any problems with your tasks. So as an FTC example, let's say that the people building the drivetrain don't have enough Allen keys. So this will slow down construction, so it's a problem. And the purpose of the daily stand-up meeting is to find these issues and address them. So like buying more Allen keys. Obviously, they're a bit more complex issues, and your team would use this time to work out these problems. So at the end of the sprint, or at the end of the time period, the team discusses what tasks they did and did not complete. They also demonstrate what added functionality they produced during the sprint. For example, they often could now decide colors. So you want to review what you guys did complete throughout the whole sprint, because this allows for this facilitates planning for the next sprint as well, because you now have a better idea of what you can complete in that time period, what you have still left to do. And finally, they also address what worked and didn't work during the sprint and how they can improve on the next one. This way, the team is constantly finding and eliminating problems or slowdowns, therefore being more productive. This whole concept of a discussion and coming together as a group in order to work out your problems makes your jobs a lot easier for your team as a whole, especially since you have more minds working on one problem. So in conclusion, a Scrum is a framework that allows for constant improvement and definite targets. So regarding our task board, we, as I mentioned, we use an application called Trello, and Sachin is going to be talking to you a bit about that.
Yes, so basically the way that our team implements Scrum is an app called Trello. So up here I have one example of one of our task boards. So Trello is an organizational tool used by many software companies in order to evenly distribute work and complete tasks in the most efficient way possible. So this is what one of our team boards look like. It's specifically designed, as Bhavna explained, for 2-week intervals that we call sprints. So the goal at the end of each sprint is to have a tangible product, and that helps boost morale, but also it helps document process, especially coming in handy like towards the end of the season when you can really see each iteration of, say, like your intake or your drive. So or in different list details what each color stands for. So blue would be any hardware tasks. Green is software. Purple would be anything finances related. Red is engineering notebook and documentation. Yellow is website, which is more pre-season stuff. And then black is anything that we do at home instead of here. So each different list symbolizes a different like topic or field in which some task would be located. So towards the beginning of our season, this is our very first sprint, we had divided it into main backlog, sprint backlog, in progress, review, and completed. So the main backlog would basically be all tasks for the entire season. Anything that we could think of, we would add to the main backlog. The sprint backlog is more of a, what are we going to do in the sprint? And the sprint backlog is more amplified in the sprint, one of our later sprints. And we divided that sprint backlog into notebook and presentation, hardware, software, and then of course we have in progress, review, and completed. So the in progress is anything that we're working on currently, anything that is maybe being done at home or just still working on through multiple meetings. That was where in progress would go. And then the review section is anything that, say I completed one of my documentation tasks and I wanted someone to proofread it, that's where I would put something for review. And then completed is obviously anything that is already complete, and we don't want to really delete a task because this is a really great way to pay attention to iterations and also document progress throughout the season. So as Bhavna said, we start off with stand-up meetings at the beginning of every meeting, and we go over any problems that we faced and also anything that, basically going over everything that we had done and what we're going to do going forward. And at the beginning of each sprint, we play this game called Planning Poker, where basically, as similar to the stand-up meeting, it's where the whole group meets and we add on any tasks that we had already known that we were going to use. And then from there, we organize them into the sprint backlog, which is the notebook, hardware, and software. And then from there, we all sit down and take one task, for example. So let's say the table of contents. Somebody counts down, and then at the end, we all hold up 1, 2, 3, or 4. So those numbers signify the time that the tasks would take and like also sort of difficulty level. So for example, table of contents, that would kind of just be organizing stuff to the end. So it's kind of a more simple task that wouldn't really take much. So we voted that as a 1. Whereas testing autonomous is more of a long task that takes a little while to do. So that's a 4. So we basically all hold up one number, and then depending on that number, we assign a task how long it would take. In addition to that, we have story points, which you can see right here. For example, writing the presentation script and practicing presentation, that's 8 story points, which means it's basically, it's like a difficulty level, and also it differentiates big tasks from small tasks. And basically, in simple terms, a story point is a number that tells the team about the difficulty level of the story, and that could be related to complexity, time, and effort involved. So lastly, we assign each task members. So you can see that everybody's up here on the board. And so we have assignments based on team roles and how much work someone has to do for that sprint. So for example, if I didn't have a lot to do, but or if I had finished my documentation tasks, maybe I would go and help the software team if they had a particularly large amount of stuff to do that sprint. So that pretty much sums it up for sprints and Trello. And obviously these are just suggestions, but moving on, I'm gonna let Mohit take over for finances.
Yeah. Okay, so another important part of, are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Just making sure. So another important part of keeping your team organized is finances, organizing your finances and keeping them in check. So what we have here is an example budget that us Team Juice 16236 used for this season. So this was made at the beginning of the season, and I recommend most teams create such a budget at the beginning of the season to help plan out expenses, and it'll give you a better sense as to how much you're going to spend throughout the season, and this will also let you know how much you need to raise with the grants and fundraisers. So try to be as detailed as you can, but of course you're not going to know every single part you're going to buy. And that's where the purchase order list comes in. So we use this to detail every single one of our purchase orders throughout the season. So in FTC, the purchase order list comes in. So we use this to detail every single one of our purchase orders throughout the season. So in FTC, you're constantly going to be improving upon your robot, building new designs. And with that, you're going to be buying new parts and tools. So this is a good way to keep track of all those parts and tools you're going to buy throughout the season. So as you can see, we have a list of all of the parts and wheels or the parts and tools that we bought throughout the season. And this is good to, making sure we're organized and keeping a tab on how much we've been spending throughout the season. Similar to expenses, I recommend you guys keep a tab on your income. So this is a basic list of how much companies have given us, and this is gonna give you a good idea of how much you've raised, and then you can always compare that with how much you're going to be spending. So this is always good to keeping both an expenses and an income sheet. It's really good to staying organized in terms of finances throughout the whole season. Now, as to actually raising money, there are multiple ways, but one of the ways that the Team Juice raised money was through cold emails. And cold emails is basically when we compiled a list of companies and we sent each one of them emails asking for funds. And this is a general outline of the email that we sent to each one of those companies. And keep in mind that although this strategy may not be too successful, it's really, even if you have a small success rate, it's really about how much money you raise. the template that we used. Start off with an intro and find that this email template can be used for not only it can be used for like emailing any, or you can use it for any other type grant requests. So we thought it was a good general outline. So you're going to start off with sort of an intro, and this includes you want to are where you come at passage you or this paragraph, because you don't lead them on throughout this, and at the end their time and to them. So just want to give them a hint as to what you're going to be asking for at the end of this. And then the next thing is you want to talk to them about FTC. And this is good because it not only informs them more about where their money is going, but it also it can also help them decide whether or not their ideals, sorry about that, their how well their ideals align with FTC's ideals. So gracious professionalism and all of that, it's very good because the companies understand where exactly their money is going and how well their ideals align with FTC. And next, you want to talk about the why, as to why you need the money, what makes your team unique in a sense. After that, give them more information as to what exactly you do. And this is a really good opportunity to talk about outreach. It's a good way for them. It's good to show companies that their money isn't only going towards robotics, but also it's gonna they're investing in the community as a whole. So you're showing them that their money goes into improving or educating your community. And then the last paragraph would be more or less about the specifics. So what exactly you're going to use the money for, and this is where you can talk about parts, kits and everything you're going to be using the money for, and also the proposal. So we would like to know if so-and-so would be willing to donate such amount of money to the team. And at the end, you're going to have a conclusion, and on a light note, we hope that so-and-so will consider a request is a good way to do so. And then of course, thank them. And then you have your, sincerely, whoever wrote the email. So this is a really good template for whatever way you want to fundraise. And keep in mind that cold emailing is not the only way. There are multiple other ways to do fundraising. Some great ways I recommend are grant requests. So look for grants around your area and fill out the application. Those are really good, as well as fundraisers. Contact your local Chipotle or Pieology or something like that, and then usually they'll give you around 20% of the proceeds they make in a certain amount of time, and that's also a really, really good way of raising money. And yeah, that more or less ends the finances part of this.
So does anyone have any questions yet? So I think one person asked, what's the difference between Trello and Slack? So I think Slack, maybe one of my teammates can answer this better than me, but I think Slack is more of like kind of like Discord, I guess, where it's a group chat and you would like use it to communicate with each other, versus Trello is a little more like an organizational, like board type of system. I don't know if any of Bhavna or Mohit, do you guys have a better explanation for that?
I would say the same thing. I think Trello works better simply as an organizational system because it serves like kind of like a whiteboard. You can assign certain tasks and such, but
Yeah, so that pretty much answers that one.
Someone's asking, how do you get the part names and prices into the Google Docs?
Mohit, I think that's yours.
You're muted.
Could you repeat the question? It's not showing up on my screen for some reason.
They're asking, how do you get the part names and prices into the Google Docs?
The part names and prices.
Are you talking about the
this
chart?
right here. Basically, we create an Excel spreadsheet, and then what you're going to do is, if you're talking about the link specifically, you can actually embed links, or it's called a hyperlink, and you can embed them into whatever text you have. And then is that what they were asking about, or?
I think so. They weren't specific.
But yeah, I would suggest the reason we embed links into the part of the name, or the name of the tool, is because we can always view where we bought it from, and if we want more details on the part, we can always find that really easily.
So I think another question is,
yeah.
Can you put the shareable link of the cold email template in the follow-up email?
Could you repeat that, Sanjana?
Can you put the shareable link of the cold email template in the follow-up email?
Yes. Are they? Wait, I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I don't quite. If you wanted to elaborate on what you mean by the shareable link.
They want the document.
Oh, did they want me to share the cold email template?
Oh, like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. So here's another question. So you mentioned that you guys will have regular team meetings to list out tasks that you want to accomplish in a sprint. How long do those team meetings take? So I assume you guys mean the sprint planning ones. Our team did it without like meeting in person. We just did it over like just a call or something like that. It took about usually not more than like 30 to 45 minutes. If you really like know exactly what you're going to be doing, obviously in the beginning it's going to take a little bit longer because you're not really used to the whole 1, 2, 3, 4. Like people have to get used to that. But as you get further in, they get a lot shorter, and then you also have more like direct tasks rather than the kind of vague fundraising ones, outreach ones, stuff like that. So yeah.
Any other questions? There's nothing else that I could see, but.
So somebody asked, how do you get the checklist mark out, the green one? I'm not quite sure what you mean.
They're on one of our budget docs. I think they're.
Yeah. So here, I can screen share real quick. Just a sec. Yeah. Okay. So is click on any box, and then click it, and then go down to data validation. If we can. All right. Right click it, and then to data validation. And then what you're going to do is for criteria, you're going to click on checkbox, and then save. And so now you can check it or not. And then if you want to make it green, you're going to go to conditional, and then see like if you're going to type out if format cells and set to green, and when it gets checked. But that's basically how you're gonna get these check boxes right here. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, if you guys need us to elaborate, you guys can ask further questions in the Slido, I think.
They're asking if we can display the Slido screen.
I think so.
There's only 2 questions. One person is asking, is 15K a good budget for a first year team for everything?
Did you say 15K?
Yeah, they're asking if it's a good budget.
Bhavna?
Yeah.
1.5?
Yeah,
I mean, for a rookie team, I think that might be a little too much. For us, we didn't spend like over 10K. So I would say keep your budget, as detailed as possible, but try not to exaggerate too much, because you don't want to create more work than you need. But at the same time, having a slightly exaggerated budget is gonna, of course, make you want to raise more money, and you can use that for next year. But to answer the 15K question, I think that's a little too much for a rookie team. But I think it would be around K. Then again, this all not only your role spending money, more things, transportation, like food, things like that. So that it can vary per team, but I would definitely say 15 is a little too much for a rookie team. But don't be afraid to raise as much money as you can, because you can always do the next season. So yeah, keep that in mind.
So this is the Slido screen.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the 10K, yeah, I would say 10K is definitely budget. That's most of it, more or less.
Someone's asking, Trello.com is a shareable doc, right? Was it easy to learn and use? Were your meetings done on Zoom? How many teammates were on a meeting? Trello.com is, yeah, it's a collaborative website. So you create your own board, and so you can share your board to certain emails. And when we did our meetings, they would be through Discord, like call. And then there would be generally like 9 people on there.
Yeah, so it was pretty easy for me to learn, at least. I think it's pretty user friendly. It's not hard to kind of like learn all the ins and outs of it. And I think also as you go on, you just kind of naturally learn a couple more perks to Trello. But yeah, it's shareable, and whoever you share it with are the only people that can see it. And then you can also make like team boards so that all the boards will be shared with the same people in the team. So yeah.
So you could have like a team and then you can have boards within them. So like for us, we had our team 16236 board, and then there would be sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, and then all of those would be shared to everyone in the team.
Yeah, so I think it was pretty easy. And I think it's also not hard to have a lot of people on the planning meetings, as I think one of the other questions had asked. Um, I think you can go up to like 15, and I think it would still be fine doing the planning meetings. So yeah. Next question. What are some of the expenditures teams should be aware of?
Yeah. So of course, uh, some of the first things that come to mind are the kits, your Allen keys, your screws, your nuts. All of those are basic, and you're gonna need them for sure throughout the season. Apart, I would uh, think about shipping costs. For example, for us, that throughout the season, that probably added to around like $300-$400 extra for ship. Definitely keep that in mind. Make sure you add that in your budget. Registration is a lot of money, and you definitely account for money. Then also you also keep insurance for like miscellaneous, and that includes hotel rooms, food, um, team equipment such as bags, bandanas, things like that, for especially Inspire, because they so keep like things like t-shirts, printing your energy book, printing that at home costs some money as well. Keep those in as well when you're making your budget.
Yeah, as you said, there's a lot of really small things that go into it. Um,
Can you go over the differences between Trello and Sprint? So Trello itself is like your organization board, but a sprint is the time period with which you split up your season. So a sprint, for example, we used 2 weeks. So these 2 weeks would be a kind of guideline to show us like what we wanted to do within each period. And so that's different from Trello because Trello itself is a website that you use for task organization. It's not a time period, but a sprint is.
so is there a way to download a task board from Trello and paste it into the engineering notebook, for example? Um, I we've actually been doing something similar. We don't download the task board, but we just like screenshot the task board. Um, and then we'll just use it as an example to explain. That's what we actually explained Scrum in our engineering notebook. So we screenshotted a couple of our task boards from Trello and then added them to our engineering notebook. So you can definitely do that. You don't really have to download.
Because the Trello board isn't necessarily one like the entire width of a screen. It might take several pages, so that's why we screenshotted it. So there's no like strict way to download it necessarily. You need to just take pictures.
Yeah. For getting fundraisers from local restaurants, do you usually email them or go to the store and ask? So for restaurants such as Chipotle or Piology, I know that they have specific fundraising, a website where you actually apply for a fundraising opportunity. You select like a date, what your event is, how many people you expect, things like that. You fill out the application, you submit it, and they usually respond to you within like a week, and they tell you whether or not you got it. But for if you're not sure about other restaurants, I would definitely suggest emailing them first, because usually you're going to want to talk to the store manager and they aren't always there, but you're able to find them, find their email. So definitely email them first. And if they prefer meeting, you can always ask for an appointment and then go meet them. And you can, then talk about what you want to do, how many people you're expecting, things like that. Hope that helped. So what are some examples of grants to apply for? So grants, they usually vary throughout the area. What we've done is we look for grants around Sacramento, since that's our area. But some really good grants I would suggest applying for would be, if you're a rookie team, you can get the DECA FTC rookie grant, and that's basically only for rookie teams, and they give you around, pretty sure it's around $500. Yeah, $500 for starting off, and that can be used for registration. Apart from that, there's some really good ones, like if you're in the Sacramento region, there's this thing called the Kelly Foundation grant, and that and that's a really big grant in terms of the application, and that's really good as well. But I would definitely suggest, since it varies throughout, since it varies per area, each area is going to have different companies offering different grants. So definitely do your research, look for grants around your area and then apply. And also, when you're looking for these grants, keep in mind that usually they'll have an eligibility section of the website, and they'll talk about who they're looking to invest in or give the grant to. So if it's more oriented, for example, one time I came across a grant only for gardening and growing flowers and stuff like that. So of course you're not going to be able to apply for that. So keep that in mind as well.
So the next one looks like, do you encounter any challenges that Trello may not satisfy all of your needs? Personally, I don't think that I've found any, at least team-specific stuff that you would really need outside of Trello. I don't really have any complaints. I don't know if you two have any other.
I don't think so, because on Trello as well, you can assign certain tasks to certain people. You can set due dates, and then just put descriptions for extra information. I don't really think there's any problems that we've experienced with it.
I think the one thing would be just making sure your team sticks to their tasks, and making sure that everyone is doing their part and doing it on time. So I think that's the biggest part. You can set the tasks, but you want to make sure that you stick to it and actually do it.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that Trello and Scrum work, is if you really implement it in your team. Otherwise, it really won't work for you guys. So yeah.
Do you want to open up that link? Yeah.
A YouTube link?
I think.
Okay. Right. Any other questions? Anything else you guys want to know about managing a team? Is Scrum another application or just a method to organize? It's not an application, it's just what the system is called. So yeah, it's just a method to organize.
Yeah, it's not more of a philosophy than an actual thing.
So I did want to mention that there are multiple apps that you could use. You don't have to use Trello. I think that there's a lot of similar ones. So I think you can just do some research and find what works best for your team.
What is some advice to get started researching for grants? What keywords do you usually look for?
So definitely look for, location wise, around your area, because companies like investing in their local community. Apart from that, I would say tech related, STEM related, yeah, definitely STEM related grants, because uh, robotics is of course STEM, and you want to make sure that you're filtering your grants to grants that are aligned or um, looking for people that they can invest in certain areas. So STEM related, tech related. You can even look for robotics grants, I guess, like things like the DECA grant I mentioned. Um, that's specifically for FTC rookie teams. And just just some advice, just so you know, like you're not always gonna find the best grants, or you're not always even gonna find grants that are gonna, some of them might be expired as well. So don't get discouraged. Um, you're always gonna find some, and even if you don't, get them, because grants are usually, some of them are pretty competitive, because it's not only teams applying for them. There are, nonprofits, other things like that applying as well. So don't get discouraged. Just keep looking, and you'll definitely find some. um, how early in the season do you start contacting companies for sponsorship? So I would say you can start as early as you want, because um, companies don't necessarily have a timeline as to, most companies at least don't necessarily have a timeline as to when they start giving out just funds. But I would say start whenever, as early as you can, because it's definitely a fairly tedious process. It's not going to be easy. You have to keep, if you receive interest from some company, you have to keep emailing them, keep staying in touch. So start as early as you can, and extra money earlier on is never going to hurt you. Have you guys ever had to meet a company in person? Yeah. So we actually have. We actually met with Micron to discuss a sponsorship, and our team captain Henry actually went and talked with them. But basically, they wanted to know what they're investing in. So I believe some of the things he talked about was, our outreach is specifically, and as well as FTC. The cold email template that I talked about is it's really good to use, even if you want to verbally, even if you want to talk about it verbally. Um, but yeah, uh, I would say following the cold email template at a presentation is good.
How
Hope
long
that
did
answers.
where did you learn about it? Did many other teams use Trello or a similar app? We actually just started using it this year. Um, one of our team members actually personally used it as an organization app, so that's how we learned about it. But I've heard of a few other teams, but I don't think it's widely used yet. But since we consider it such a great organization method, that's why we brought it up in our workshop.
Yeah. As far as other ones, I think I have heard of Monday.com. I don't really know if that's as useful for robotics teams because of the way that it's formatted. But you can definitely try it. I've never done that, so I wouldn't speak from experience. But I think that you could try different ones. Probably just like a couple minutes of research, you could come up with a list of a couple of them. Maybe try them out one each week during like off season and see what works best for you. So yeah.
Real. Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, real quick. For the person that asked about the funding presentation, I'd like to just show you our Micron funding presentation. And this is what our team captain Henry went to and used. So we started off with who we are, just telling them about Team Juice, what we compete in. Also talk to them about Selling But Deadly STEM Education Inc., which is the nonprofit we're part of. And then of the presentation, companies definitely want to see, you know, they want to see the community as a whole. Yeah, attach some pictures of the workshops and outreach that we've done. And then we also talked about our we want to show off that we're using industry standard tools, and here we show them some of our CAD and we really went through the engine process and showed that off in this presentation. Here we have Scrum. Here you can see an example of us taking from and talking to them about that. And we ended off IB funding. You definitely want to mention budget, because they want to see how much you're going to be spending, and they want to know that you really do need the money. So end off on that note, and this is what we use to get funds for Micron.
And then I think on one of the slides there, for someone who had asked how to show Scrum on like your engineering notebook, on one of the slides they had a screenshot. Yeah. So that's how we've been using it.
But I just wanted to say that the cold email template that I had shown earlier on, and so that's definitely a good template to go off of for, the basic aspects that you want to talk about when you're asking for funds.
The slide I was asking, what is Agile, from the Micron funding presentation? Well, an Agile like project development system is really just like, you screen sharing. Yeah.
Where is it? Yeah, right here.
Yeah. So it's really just a development method to overcoming obstacles, or like coming up with solutions as like for a collaborative like effort. It refers to like the method of organization or problem solving. Any other questions?
Oh, let me stop sharing.
Anyone have any last questions?
So if we don't have any other questions, just wrap it up by, I think Heather's going to be sending out a follow-up email, and then that'll have our cold email and the presentations, the Scrum presentations, and then we'll try and put a screenshot of one of our sprint boards, so that way you guys can kind of see how we organized ourselves. And then also, I think Heather sent in the chat a feedback form. So if everybody could just fill that out and then let us know how we did, that would be great. Thank you.